Michael Woodhouse, 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, at the moment I'm reading the autobiography of the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and I was very interested to note a quote he made about the Labour Party, which goes thus: "Today it seems completely unacceptable, ridiculous even, that the unions play such a decisive role in the selection of candidates and the leader. Labour was formed, funded and run by the unions, so the roots were inseparably intertwined, with, I'm afraid, very mixed long-term consequences." Well, I think you really got that right, and I read it over the weekend that the New Zealand Labour Party changed its constitution to do just that. And I can imagine the terror in David Shearer as he realised that only 40% of his caucus would be required by Mr Cunliffe to roll him. And I can imagine him running to David Parker, his erstwhile finance spokesman, and saying, "David, you're a finance guy. What's 40% of the caucus?" And David Parker would turn around and go, "David, it's 95. "But David, are you sure?" "Yes, I've checked it twice." "But hang on, there's only 34 in our caucus." "No, it's definitely 95. And the most amazing thing about last week was the fact that David Shearer, when a result of one poll that might have suggested that the tide was turning, and I suggested that was pretty premature, that had the Greens measuring up the head curtains in the beehive, that Mr Shearer immediately ruled Dr Russell Norman out as a future Minister of Finance. Well, I think that's a bit dodgy, really, because he might be crazy, but at least he can count. It's one of the prerequisites for being a Minister of Finance. And even Mr Parker, in his speech, in the biggest suck-up of the day, said he gave Mr Shearer 7 to 11 out of 10. How on earth one gets 7 to 11 out of 10 for a performance by the Leader of the Opposition, I'll never know. But I say this to the Greens: if one wants to eliminate child poverty, don't give me a family support payment. It is not going to work. It needs to be more targeted. To Gareth Hughes, if one calls for an inquiry into a method of mining and drilling, and the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment comes out and says there is no evidence that it is unsafe, then listen to the Parliamentary Commissioner. Don't continue to bury one's head in the sand, because that's all we've heard from Labour and the Greens this year. If only we could hear one word that is yes. Yes, we support something that the government is doing to grow the economy, but no. No to the intensification of the agricultural sector. No to more oil and gas exploration. No to more good jobs coming from Australia to New Zealand, making welfare work, the 90-day probation period, any of our labour market reforms, ultra-fast broadband, foreign investment in New Zealand and the 3,000 jobs that came from the Hobbit. No, no, no. Well, I know why. The polls are showing that the government support has not flinched in 4 years, Mr Speaker, and that's because this is a caucus united behind a leader. And I want to thank my colleagues for their support through this year. It has made my job easier as Senior Whip. The fact that the energy is high, the discipline is good, and we are united behind the Prime Minister and leader of this party. Some lessons I think that opposition parties could draw on. But I also want to add my thanks to the staff, as has been mentioned by other colleagues, security, Hansard, clerks, and the many others who make Parliament work. I also want to acknowledge my fellow whips. There is a lot that goes on behind the scenes that isn't seen, and I've enjoyed working with Messrs Hipkins, Fenton, Hughes, Stewart and Flavel. But to you, Mr Speaker, call me Nostradamus-like, but I have a feeling that there will be an opportunity in the not-too-distant future for some teary-eyed nostalgia. But in the meantime, on behalf of my caucus, I do want to congratulate and thank you for the manner in which you, your deputy and your assistants have managed proceedings in the House this year. To you, Merry Christmas, enjoy a safe and relaxing break, and also to members of the public and all in this House, a very Merry Christmas and a happy and more prosperous New Year.
My colleagues, thank you very much for your kind comments with respect to me and my team of speakers.